In this episode, we talk about the very first step in designing e-learning scenarios. It's, what the heck am I doing this for? What is the goal? All right, get ready. This one's loaded with stories.
You're here because you want more engagement, more delight, more fun, more learning. You're hungry for change and willing to take action.
If you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original.
Welcome to the E-Learning Scenario Design Podcast with Anna Sabramowitz.
I'm gonna show you how great I am.
Let's take learning to the next level.
All right, welcome to this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. So glad you could. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a wonderful day. And maybe this will make it just a little bit better. How are you today? I'm sending you some virtual hugs. Yeah, I do that. Don't get uncomfortable. Hugging's okay. All right, so let's talk about designing scenarios. The very first step. What is the first step? A lot of people say it needs analysis. Really, it's really just figuring out why the heck are we doing this scenario in the first place? Is it because everybody thinks scenarios are cool? No. Well, that too, of course, right? But really, we're trying to figure out what is the purpose? What are you trying to achieve by designing this masterpiece, right? Now, some of the examples that I came up with as to why in the world you would be designing a scenario for somebody is because you're trying to fix some kind of problem, right? People are not doing this and I want them to do it, so let's design a scenario where they're doing it. So people are not selling enough stuff. And maybe, stock's not moving out fast enough. I want stock to move faster. Can we design a scenario to help stock move faster? Can we design a scenario that fixes a problem that says, we sell cars to customers, but they're not coming back for service. We need to fix that. That's a training problem. Here's another problem. There's the staff put the wrong information in the return order forms. And so there's a lot of errors. They're even putting in numbers that, stock that we don't even have when people return stuff, just to get them out of the, why are they doing that? Why are they putting in numbers that are wrong? We need to fix that. Let's train them on how to do it properly. Let's train them how to do that the right way. Here's another huge problem we're trying to fix. People get injured while they're operating heavy machinery. I want those injuries to go away because it costs us a lot of money. Fix it. Now, those are all, and I'm sorry, my chair is a little squeaky today. So if you hear something in the background, it's my chair. Or the occasional float plane, because where I live, there's planes that land on water and they are so loud. Anyways, back to what we're talking about. So here's another thing. What about, I feel like we're very focused on problems, but I'm going to try and persuade you that the way to look at this is opportunity. What is our opportunity? So let's say we go to the people are not selling enough. How about instead of looking at it that way, like people are not selling enough, we say, what's the opportunity there? And the opportunity is increasing sales. So our starting point is how can we increase sales? So start with abundance, right? Let's try that. Let's say the one with the stock's not moving. How about let's move even more stock? Because some stock's moving, right? So how can we move even more stock? And let's say the one I said about the customers are not coming back for service after they buy a car. How about we think about it this way? Make service the reason people come to buy a car at our dealership. How about we do that? Wrong information in the order form, accuracy goes up to 97%. Because there's people doing it right. How can we do it even better? How can we optimize that? So, reduce injuries on the job. Nah, let's think about it in a different way. How about we create a safe job space for 6 months, error-free for 6 months. I don't know. I think it should be like forever, but let's say set a metric, right? And I think that's the way we should start thinking about it, because the problem is, and here's, and I'm problem focused right now, right? That's kind of bad. The opportunity is, and I like to think about it this way. There's things that are already working, and the things that are already working, sometimes, actually, I think many times, if you just double down, triple down, whatever your Las Vegas term in Hold'em, Texas Hold'em poker needs to be, what can we do that makes more people do that awesome thing at our company? Because there are already rock stars. Now, my kind of philosophy is, and I think that this is the way we have to start thinking, is that, and we may be bringing these things over, like, that whole idea of no child left behind. Like, I get that. That's great. But that's not how business works, right? It's not like that. The idea, which was, I think, proposed by Jack Welch, and I don't know because I haven't actually read the book. I just got this synopsis of Jack Welch's ideas through some interviews and other things, is that a company, in order to be successful, should let go of the bottom 10% of people every year. And so what happens is the people that stay are the cream of they're the top performers. And every year, your top performers get to stay and people who are not top performers get to go away. And so it seems to me that our focus still in a lot of the e-learning, because we're focusing on the problems, we're always focusing on the bottom 10%. Instead of focusing on, heck, let's focus on the top 50%. Because, and I'll probably pull it out in a different podcast, but there's like this, I believe, there is, I don't know if you've ever heard of that Pareto principle, right? It's kind of like 80% of results come from 20% of your efforts, right? And so we should be like applying this like crazy. So imagine if, and I think this actually, that this distribution is like extremely successful across almost every single variable you can think of in the world. So here's an example. Probably, 20%, like let's say you have a store where there is 10 salespeople. 2 of those salespeople are probably bringing in 80% of your revenue every day. And that's how it works. It's almost the same with customers. Let's say 20% of your customers actually bring in 80% of your revenue. Everybody else is kind of like eating up your time or whatever. So what I want us to start thinking about is the opportunities. And when we talk to our clients and the people who are coming to us for help, let's talk to them about what's working and how we can make that work even better. Because a lot of times, and I talk about this concept also, the lead domino, a lot of times if you can identify what is that pinnacle, that behavior that is the lead domino, which means that it makes everything else either less relevant or all the other problems completely disappear because you're doing that well. Let's figure out what that is. And that's what I'm trying to focus on here, is let's not focus on the people who are inadequate, because a lot of our learning, let's say, if we're trying to do something where we're trying to increase sales, it will probably take less effort and less training for somebody who's already quasi there to take them to the next level versus somebody who is completely unmotivated, has been there for, let's say, 6 months and still sucks. that's going to be a way more effortful investment versus somebody who's kind of getting it, but just needs that little bit of a tweak or a little bit of a mind shift. A lot of times it's internal stuff like, I don't believe I'm the kind of person who can do it, or I haven't seen anybody, let's say, who's, let's say, selling at the $50,000 level. Maybe I haven't seen anybody who's been consistently selling at 50,000, let's say, sales in every year, that those people have ever moved up to 100,000. I haven't seen any of my peers do that. Maybe that's the kind of change that you need to implement. So what I'm saying is, let's start focusing on what's working and who is working in that realm, because we want to know what are they doing, right? And these scenarios, they can help us. They can be the vehicle. All right. So, okay. So let's get back to writing goals. Let's say for a second, because this really is about when you think about the goal of your scenario, you're also thinking about what are the learning goals, right? And I think learning goals are, I'm sorry, you've heard this, you know this, nobody reads them. The only people that they matter to are the people who design the learning, and they have to create that, I'm sorry, the stupid page in the beginning with these action verbs. It is not important. It does not matter. And the reason it does not matter to our learner, and I'm not saying that you don't need them. Do not misunderstand me. You do need the learning goals, but the way that we represent them is so academic that they are so abstract. People skip over them because they mean nothing, right? So what I'm going to show you in my mind's eye. I'm going to imagine something and try and telepathically through talking share it with you, and hopefully you get it. So what I will share is actually an example where somebody is taking a learning goal that's kind of, for the academics in us, the instructional designers in us, and turning it into almost like an actionable question that's for the user-centered designers in us. And when I say user-centered, I really mean learner-centered. I really mean people who every single time you're doing something you're designing a piece, you're going, who cares about this? How can I make them care more? Am I talking to the right people? So let me just reiterate that when we write the learning goals, they are for us. They are very us-centered. And I used to write goals I used to have the Bloom's taxonomy. I still do. I have that. The Bloom's taxonomy is basically just a list of verbs at different levels. They're supposed to mean something to the learner. Like the list is, at the very bottom is no. When I say at the very bottom, I mean like the most basic as far as what you should be able to do. And so at the bottom are recall type goals. And then as you move up in complexity, the verbs that are suggested get more complex. So what's cool though is at the very top really is almost the easiest sounding verb, but the most complex, which is like apply, create, infer, all the things that you do when you start thinking about all the information and the skills you've gathered and actually start combining them to solve problems in the real world, because they've now become a part of your toolbox. So, see, that's cool because you may already understand that as an instructional strategist, as an instructional media developer, whatever it is. But the problem is that's your world, that's your language, And we have to turn that into something meaningful for the people who don't live in our world, are not interested in it. They're interested in outcomes. And what they're really interested in is, the minute they start your scenario, is what's in it for me? Why should I be here? And one of the things that I think we're going to talk about a little later is just that motivation piece. So I was thinking, because there is an app that I checked out that I actually really like. It's designed by Google. Hopefully I can maybe one day talk to the people who were part of that design process. It's called Primer. And the reason Google designed Primer, which is only an app, you can't like go to the website and experience it. It's designed to help you leverage Google services to optimize your business, right? And what's really cool is that they've created all these little modules. They create these little learning modules with these questions, and really they use storytelling to do this. They designed these little modules to be for adult audiences and people who are trying to start a business or trying to optimize their business. And so what I wanted to do is pick one that I think would be kind of interesting to look at and then deconstruct as far as their learning outcomes and how they present them to an audience that is so driven by results. They're not driven by, I want to learn stuff for the sake of learning stuff, like some of us are, right? Like we'll learn, like some of us, I know this, we will like dig into things because they're interesting and cool and we might use them one day. We're probably the people who love watching Jeopardy or discovering new apps. Let's be real. Our learners are not those people. Our learners are people who have 15 minutes. We're borrowing their time. How do we make it awesome? Okay. So let me just pick up my phone because it's actually on my phone, this Primer app, which is so awesome. Okay. So the name of the module is Create Strong Job Postings to Hire Strong Employees. By the way, what a kick-ass title, right? For a module. Create strong job postings to hire strong employees. Cool. So here is what the, really, if I could do this, I could write, if I was thinking about, I'm an instructional strategist here. I'm trying to decide what the learning outcomes are. I've come up with these outcomes by talking to people who are experts at hiring, people who are experts at interviewing, let's say, and people who are experts at human resources type stuff. So here's some learning outcomes that I have come up with for my module for this first one, which is how to hire people. And the first section is really about job descriptions. So identify the 3 most important components of a job description. That's what people should be able to do at the end of this module. Differentiate between effective use of language and job descriptions, and identify qualities of a good job candidate. Now, some of these might sound interesting if the person that you're talking to is really aware that these are important. Otherwise, they won't care. So for every one of these, what Primer has done is they have changed them into this beautiful, and heck, we should all use this strategy. What they said is, instead of saying learning outcomes, they framed it all in terms of questions. So every single, after you read the title and you swipe to the next page, it says, these are the things that we will answer. And here's what the exact same learning outcomes, except now they've turned them into learner-centered questions. So, why should I take the time to craft a strong job description? Why, right? What steps can I take to make sure I'm attracting strong job candidates? What can I do? What should I include in the job description? What is beautiful here is that these are no longer for me. They're for the people who are now trying to go through the scenario. And turning them into questions, what happens now is that these have now become, they speak to your audience and address their needs, right? But also, what else do? They quickly identify who my target audience is. So if somebody doesn't actually have these questions or they don't think these questions are important, they might not go through this module. So what I would do is, because, the information that's in this module is specifically if people want these questions answered. I'm sure there's other questions that people want answered. So what you can do is, if you don't know how to... if you don't know which questions people actually have, you can actually just ask them. You can just say, hey, everybody, so we're trying to get people to, share or sell more widgets, sell more t-shirts today. And I'm just wondering, what kind of questions would you have about selling more t-shirts? Like if you wanted to sell 20 instead of 5. And some people might say, well, why should I care about selling more t-shirts? I don't, whatever it is. All of a sudden now you have these questions and you can turn them into pockets of little scenario pieces that you can now address. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, do let me know by emailing me, anna@elearnerengaged.com. Now, okay, so here's some mindsets or like a perspective I think you need to own. Because, so let's say we have to ask ourselves this question, like when somebody successfully finishes this course, this scenario, they should be able to, I don't know, sell a shirt. I think that's kind of idealistic. No, it's idealistic, period. It's not kind of idealistic. Like, you get 15 minutes. Let's be real about what we can accomplish. What can we really accomplish? Can we teach somebody something in 15 minutes? Maybe, but the challenge is that a lot of times 15 minutes is not enough time to teach somebody something, unless like you're teaching them something so small. Like we're talking at this point, 15 minutes to me is a micro lesson, because when people say, 3 or 4 minutes, that's an information bite to me. To actually have somebody learn something, one single skill in 15 minutes, that's the max you can expect. And even then, setting yourself up for a failure. So I'm proposing that your scenarios, what they can be super effective at is to help people become aware of their actual gaps. As in, I thought I was an awesome delegator. I thought I was an awesome communicator. I thought I was, an amazing problem solver, critical thinker. Oh, I'm not. Wow. I'm not. Okay, so what do I do about that? That doesn't make me feel so great. Or heck, I want to be better because I saw this opportunity to, you showed me this way that I could be, that life would be better. That's what scenarios do. They show you how life can be better. So, look, now I have a gap and I'm going to seek out more knowledge, because this 15-minute module really helped me figure that out. Now, there's a problem with that. And the problem is people don't go out looking for gaps, right? Even if you created something that's like 100%, I'm going to show you the way. And here's practice. You really, a lot of people might even totally blow that off because they're like, yeah, I already know this stuff. You're not teaching me anything new. Or they're not even in the mindset to learn because they don't care. Let's be real. People don't go out looking for gaps. People don't go out looking for change. I mean, when I say change, I mean themselves. Nobody goes out and says, today I'm going to change. No, that's a statement, but people don't want to change. People want things around them to change to their benefit, but people don't want to change, right? So you're like, what? And you're thinking, Anna, why are you confusing me right now with all these motivational things? And I'm just really trying to scale it back. That's what I'm trying to do. And say that all of this stuff about goals and these deliverables that we're trying to achieve with scenarios, I want us to step back and say, what is actually real? What can we actually achieve? And if you approach this with this naivete that everybody loves to learn, everybody wants to change, everybody wants, everybody can see why this is good for them, that's not true. And so what can we do to actually address that? Because change is so hard. It's like, what was the last time you actually changed something? When was the last time you saw somebody from high school and they haven't changed? Guess what? They probably thought the same thing about you, right? Look, they're the same. Same. Probably same haircut. That's hard. That's who we're learning for, right? People who aren't looking to change. So how can you make this your mission? And I think this is our war. This is our path. It has everything to do with how do we inspire people to change? Because to assume that people are taking our learning because they are already primed and ready, they know they need to do something about it. Yeah, right? We're trying to help them discover that. How do we get them to change? Well, here's one idea. Tell them a great story. And the story, your scenario, can show them how good that change can be. And you're like, how do you do that? I'm not a storyteller. Well, that's fine. That's totally cool. What you can do is actually what the scenario process can do for you is put them in a situation they might imagine themselves in. And then show them, give them some options, right? You're saying, here's Jane. She's trying to, a little background about Jane. She's just a fabulous person. Today is another challenging day because she has, 2 kids at home and she's trying to really make it. But the customers are just not, they're not friendly. This mall's dead. There's not many people coming in, and when they come in, they just seem to all gravitate towards Susan, who is, for some reason, selling all the things, but she's just having a really big challenge because people don't have any money to spend. They're just walking around the mall with no money. So here's a customer that comes in. What should Jane do? They said they're just browsing. So one of the things you can do is put them in a situation where they might be, where a lot of those, your target audience is. And then one of the things is you show them some ways to handle it. And you show them some rock star ways to handle it and maybe not so rock star ways to handle it. And through showing them the consequences, either great or not so great, you're telling them a story about how things could be. Are you necessarily teaching them how to sell right away? Not necessarily. I mean, that's hard. That's a hard skill. What you are able to do, though, in that scenario is to show possibilities, is to show consequences that they would never consider. Imagine that. Now, one of the things I used to think about learning outcomes is that what a learning outcome is really a metric by which you measure if somebody has achieved their goal. And it's that's super hard to do that in an e-learning module. I know I'm not selling you on this, but that's because we set the metric up the wrong way, I think. Don't, what you want to do, because you have so much power, you have so much influence, and I want you to realize it. Maniacal laugh. That's from The Muppet Show, by the way, which I used to watch as a child, and also because I watched it as a child, I didn't understand any of it. only later in adulthood did I understand it. That was such a good adult show. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, yes. Okay. So what we set ourselves up for failure if we're saying, okay, can my 15-minute module impact somebody's skill set, and then they can go out into the world and now they can sell better. Whoa, God, that's such a tall order. No way, right? And that's assuming there is so many other things in place. You will not be able to measure that. It's not realistic. What you can do is realize that in order for your module, which is a piece of something else, your scenario is there to, let's say, make some light bulbs go off. It's the first step in somebody going, whoa, there is a better way. There is a different way. I can handle it. There's a possibility that I can get better. You make that light bulb go off, what happens? Is there enough momentum? Can you create enough momentum for that person, let's say, to then get them to take some sort of action? Are you explicit in your scenario that they can take action? And also, are they supported after that 15 minutes to get resources that help them take that action? So, let me get into, let's say, one of them is the module that I designed with Ryan Martin. It's called Broken Coworker. Broken Coworker is, and if you haven't seen it, check it out, brokencoworker.com. It's super awesome. So Broken Coworker was designed to help somebody realize that they can overcome a bully by deciding to take their action into their own hands as far as taking ownership for their decisions, for their actions, and act more assertively. There is no way that module, which has, I don't know how many interactions it has now. Anyways, let's say it's 10 or 12, where what happens is it's basically a scenario where somebody goes through and is accosted and is basically assaulted verbally or psychologically by a bully. And during those pieces, during those interactions, they are asked to make a decision on how they're going to handle it. The problem with that is, or there's no problem with that. It's a great thing to do. However, for me to then come out of that module and say, by the end of this module, you will now be able to deal with bullies is BS. It's not possible. The only thing that module is, let's say, guaranteed to maybe do is to actually make you aware of the fact that there are strategies that are better and there are strategies that are worse when dealing with social situations, and that you can go off and learn more, take ownership, and actually impact those by the way you react, by the way you act, by the way you conduct yourself. That's so one of the things that we have to really be cognizant of with our scenarios is that they are not there to teach people something. They are almost there mostly to open up this kind of a shine a light a little bit on opportunity, on possibility, and help that person take the first step, because without it, it's hitting a wall. Like if you start with, this is the better way, and you haven't won them over yet, I'm sorry, that's just going to be a click next, regardless of how good it is. So you have to draw them in with this kind of, you want behavior change. That's really hard to measure, but especially 50 minutes. So you are there to help them practice making decisions and seeing the outcomes of those decisions, because that also helps you identify gaps. show them the consequences of their decisions, see if those consequences, they have to make an evaluation. Did that decision, the outcome, is it the way that I thought that it would actually turn out? It's not. What is that? Why did it turn out that way? Now, how can I make it better? Or what should I do to prevent this from happening again, because I don't like being wrong? So obviously it helps if all the choices are credible and they are directly related to how people make errors in judgment. And the consequences, it helps if the consequences matter to those people, if they actually feel like that would actually be an effect for them. So, and you have to contextualize it as well. You know, why does it matter if I am the best person at this? Because, you know, why does it matter if I sell more? You could, and there's psychological ways to address this. You could say, well, the consequences could be that you will get fired. Let's say you'll lose your job, even if you're not making commission. You lose your job. But that's kind of the fear factor piece, which falls in to some motivation, but doesn't actually result in long-term behavior change. What you want to do is hit them with the piece where they'll be a better person as a result. Maybe they'll be a better friend as a result. Maybe they'll be an inspiration to others. Those are better outcomes. And you influence this as well, these situations, these stories, by having them see people just like them do awesome things and enjoy, the satisfaction of doing these things. So you have to convince them that there is, and see, that's the wrong word, because we're trying to do a lot of convincing, but we realize that in order for us to actually have influence, and this is from the work by Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Influence. Gosh, I hope I said his last name right. Anyways, you're not trying to you're not trying to convince. You're trying to sell your ideas to the learner, right? So the way you do that is you actually help them believe that if somebody else can do it, who's very much in their position, that then they can do it because they are just like that person. And look how far they've come. If they can do it, I can do it. And one of the things that Primer does, Primer's that Google app I mentioned earlier, what they do is first they do the whole, they turn the learning outcomes into these questions that somebody might have when they begin this journey of learning about, let's say, how to hire better people or how to write better job postings. But what they do is they start their modules with a story. And the story is usually starts with just the word imagine. Imagine Parties by Pabla is a party promotion company that's doing pretty good business. Apparently people in Pabla's town just love to party. So Pabla decides that she needs to hire a graphic designer to help her make party flyers. And she creates an ad that says, Parties by Pabla is looking for creative ninja who can do awesome visuals. Come work with a great team that loves to party. So what they do is they're very much starting to identify who their target audience is. But also, like I could say, there's imagine somebody who's just like you. And now these people are going to maybe relate to them. Who will relate to them? And let's say one of the things that you're going to say right now is, yeah, but if I create a story about one person, doesn't that, am I not only hitting one kind of person then with this message, and they're only identifying, like, what if not everybody is going to identify with the person that I'm building the learning around? Like, if my person is not a single mom working at the sales store, maybe my target audience is also the young 16-year-old or 18-year-old who just got his first job there, and they have a totally different perspective, but we also want to motivate them to make sales. That is a fantastic question. Glad you asked. So what happens is when you actually look and deconstruct the primer model, which is what we should be doing all the time when we see good stuff, is deconstructing what are the underlying layers that make it work. What you realize is the first half, which is like 3-4 paragraphs that set up the story and ask some questions, are all Pabla party focused. And then the last half is all these strategies and how can you apply these strategies. The strategies are like, let's say your strategy is about sales. Those strategies are probably like, there isn't a different strategy that you approach if somebody comes into your store and you're an 18-year-old versus the single mom, like that's hopefully older than 18. Because one of the things you want to do is you will have some common advice or common behaviors that top performers actually perform. So therefore, even if you're setting the story up with the people you want to reach that are just maybe halfway there, and you're trying to target different audiences, you can easily swap out that first part of the story, but the last half of the application and the situations, it's going to be the same. The only thing you're swapping out is maybe the person's name, because those strategies end up being, in some cases, very much alike. And the assumptions that people make about why they can't sell or why they can't get to the next level, a lot of times those are the same. So figure out what those commonalities are and then, put them at the beginning and then swap out what you need. I hope that makes sense. So it's kind of cool because Primer, they have a formula and they use it and it's fabulous because it works. So questions to ask to get better goals, just as a good recap for you, and then I'm going to let you go. What is the opportunity here? What is working now that we can make better? How can we take the top performers up? How can we take the middle performers up? Let's focus on those people. So, why are people not doing this right now? What are the obstacles? These are great for stories. These are great for your scenario consequences, right? People aren't doing this because they fear this. Well, that's an assumption. Let's make that one of the options in our scenario. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this because of this. That's great. People are, you can make assumptions like about that learning, but the best way to figure out what those assumptions are is not to talk to somebody who's been a trainer for years and years. I'm sorry, they're great subject matter experts, but they're not behavior experts as far as top performance, because most times the people who are trainers have never been a top performer at the company. And that's the reality. Usually the top performers are the top performers and they remain so until they want to leave and go someplace else and top perform. So what I suggest is that you talk to top performers as well. And you don't just talk to top performers because they suffer from curse of knowledge. They will not tell you what they do. Sometimes you have to watch them. Sometimes you have to watch them and then you can see them thinking and doing something. You have to actually interview them in the moment because they won't be able to tell you everything. But more often than not, you need to have at least information from both of those resources. And I'll talk about that in another podcast. But you really just want to make sure that you figure out what the opportunities are and how can you make them better, and why are people not doing those things right now, because maybe they're not evident. So identify the components of successful performance, the best performance. Create connections between what the top performers are doing and skills and behaviors you want your learners to emulate. What are these discrete skills? And sometimes you can only infer that after talking to somebody. I don't think we have to get perfect the first time we talk about learning outcomes. And also be flexible with that, because sometimes you realize you have 3 or 4 listed. There's only one that really matters. And if you can only get somebody's 15 minutes of time, then you want to focus on that one because you know it'll have impact because it's come through in the kind of performance that you've observed. It's come through in the conversation you've had with the top performer when they tell you about their day and what they're thinking about. You're like, this is it. This is it. This is what separates the best from the rest. Let's try and do more of that. And then so also figure out what's that value of acquiring the specific skills. And some are more valuable than others, like I said. So focus on what's the most valuable. And then the most, like for example, you might say the most important skill is identifying an opportunity to help other people, not actually helping yet. For now, it's just like if everybody just recognized that helping other people or when they're around, like at work, and the number one thing I want them to do is that the people who are top performers, let's say, they're really keenly aware of when those opportunities present themselves. Everybody else is kind of like in the dark. So maybe the first thing I want them to do is just figure out, hey, that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity. And then show them the consequences of recognizing those great opportunities, and then create the pieces at the back end after they leave your module, the support pieces to help them execute, right? So, yeah, I went on, but I hope you found this helpful. And if you have any questions, suggestions, comments, email me, anna@elearnerengaged.com. I'm also on YouTube, so just like search for designing e-learning scenarios on YouTube. And if you want, give me a review. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you're enjoying this, and then, I'm here to help. So you need anything, just email me and I'll shoot you an email back. Take care. Bye.
This is the E-Learning Scenario Design Podcast with Anna Sabramowitz.